In today's time, we have to be mindful as police officers. Okay, is this arrest or whatever I'm trying to do officiously to this person going to help or hurt? And welcome to another episode of Car to Car. I'm Ramon.
And hi, I'm Dana. Today we'll discuss a question we received that says, what is something you learned from a citizen? So tell me, what did you learn from a citizen doing it correct?
What did I learn from a citizen? That cops need to adjust to the citizen. And so what I mean by that is every culture is different. And so just understanding that Black Americans or Black citizens are going to have a certain relationship with the police. And so they're going to maybe be a little bit more aggressive minded from hurt and pain of the years of policing and what they saw. What I learned from the Hispanic community, especially young, we're taught not to let people into our personal space. But, you know, when I first came on, a lot of older Hispanic men wanted to hug me or Hispanic women wanted to touch me. So I think as a police officer, I learned that you got to treat every community different because everybody's different. And so I think the community wants us as police officers to know that, hey, there's a different level of policing that you have to do in each community. There's a different way that you have to treat us because of whatever happened in our life and things of that nature, how we relate to the police. So I learned that very young.
Yes, and I know that goes to, we used to have cultural diversity training. I don't know if police department's still doing that because I know it's a push and move from that. But that's so important to know that different cultures receive policing differently. So I also have a quick story to that point. Okay. As a commander, I was doing a presentation in front of some kids, and I was just telling them about the respect of the police and how to make that interaction go smoother. And one of the young men in there raised his hand. He said, but ma'am, what if you don't know what respect is? What if you were just raised to hear, and apparently he was raised in a household, his parent cursed at him a lot. And that's how he used to communicating with cursing. And he said, so what if he wasn't raised with necessarily those respectful tones that you talk about? And a light bulb went off, and I was like, we don't give people grace that some people just don't know common courtesies because they weren't exposed to that. So you're right, you do have to know to give people grace and just sometimes reconnect people to how this interaction will go, and just so you can all be an even footing and say, hey, if that person is starting yelling, say, hey, I'm not yelling at you, don't yell at me, and this is how we're going to communicate in this interaction. So what I learned from a citizen was the impact of how our arrests are on people. And I think we don't think about when a person is trying to navigate the court system, and say you mess with someone, you encounter someone who has several arrests, a criminal, and they want to change their life. So they want to now go and expunge their records. And now the felonies, they can only do, at the time, in the state of Florida, one felony. They can only expunge one felony. But back in the day, I was trained, stack it deep, sell it cheap as far as the charges.
Yeah.
So when you put all those charges on people, they can't sometimes get rid of all of those charges in their cases, and it stays on their record. So now you subject a person to a lifelong criminality. So sometimes bad training they receive when they tell you, hey, stack it deep, sell it cheap, let the state attorney decide what's going to be charged or not, you wind up hurting someone who is actually trying to turn their lives around because they have those charges. And sometimes they're redundant charges as well. But
it's true. Let me tell you, just to that point exactly, there's a lot of ex-felons that have been created. And when you're working in a lower economic community, you're going to bump into a lot of people who've been arrested before, a lot of people who have misdemeanors or felonies, depending on whatever charge they had, or a lot of tickets. And so you see that even some jobs are critical of how many tickets you have. In today's time, we have to be mindful as police officers. Okay, is this arrest or whatever I'm trying to do officiously to this person going to help or hurt? And I'm not saying that we gotta, somebody murder someone and we're like, hey, let me not mess up their record because they're trying to get a new job. But some things that we can be lenient on, I think we should. And I think that'll help our community. Like you said, if we keep stacking them deep and selling them cheap, we're just confining people to a life of criminality if they don't know any other way out.
Exactly. So obviously, we're talking about crimes, as you say, that you can be lenient and not necessarily be redundant. Say, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, a burglary to the courage, a burglary to the home, and things where it doesn't have to be a redundant charge. Just be mindful that it impacts people because ultimately want people to be able to do something different than criminality. So they have to have the ability to correct the record and to move forward because that's the best crime prevention, people having a job.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about what do we learn from a citizen, but I want to add this one thing since we're talking about specific charges. The resisting without, that charge drives me crazy because everything that somebody does, resisting without, we're like, how am I resisting without? It's like loitering and prowling. We wind up losing the effect of loitering and prowling because everything we were charging back 30 years ago was LMP, loitering and prowling, in a place at a time and a manner. And so it's easy to fit somebody into that loitering and prowling back then, just like I see how police officers are making it easy to fit into that resisting without. And I think we have to be careful because it's a worthy charge, but it has to be done.
Yeah, don't abuse it and
we
stuff
can't
like that
abuse
for
it.
anything. It can't be a catch-all for anything just because you want to arrest a person.
Yeah. And back to what I learned from the citizens, every community is different. Understand their community so that you have a healthy respect from what they individually gone through and not just put everybody in the same circle.
And what I learned is if you arrest the person, but don't overcharge the person because one charge may just do it. Okay, so there's another episode of Carter Car Podcast. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, and thank you for watching.
Until next time.
Yes.